Shelter was funded by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, Kentucky Educational Television Fund for Independent Production, Kentucky Arts Council, Paul Robeson Fund for Independent Media of the Funding Exchange, Commission on Religion in Appalachia, and the Kentucky Foundation for Women.
Loretta Moore, age 23, March 28th of 1994, Lewisburg, West Virginia. The assailant was her ex-boyfriend.
Carolyn Sue Morrison, 45, January 15th, 1995, in Roxbury, and the alleged assailant was her husband.
Debbie Semple, age 32, 8/6/94, in Moundsville, the alleged assailant was her ex-boyfriend.
Felicia Conley, a child, July 30th of 1996, in Chloe, and the assailant was her father.
The Child Advocate Office is tracking him down to pay some of the $10,000 child support that he owes me. And he called his attorney to inform him that he would either kill or paralyze me. So I find myself going back home, pulling the blinds, right back where I was 7 years ago, a prisoner in my own home. Then I come to a point and I said, I can't live like this. I will not go home before dark. I will not pull my blinds, and I will fight. And I know that if he wanted to shoot me, he could shoot me. But I choose to fight, and I choose to help other women to fight. And I've told everybody, and I'm telling you tonight, if something happens to me, please follow up. And probably it's not an accident, it's probably my ex-husband out there somewhere.
My name is Tiffany DePompa, and I'd like to remember my mom. She was murdered the day after Christmas in '94 by her husband, and he was sentenced to the rest of his life in prison. When I decided to leave my husband, it was because my children were being beaten on a daily basis for absolutely no good reason. And it's a miracle that we're alive. And it's thanks to people that made me realize I didn't have to spend the rest of my life like that, as funny as it seems, because it didn't seem like I could have survived.
If we ran out of groceries or something and I wanted to go to the grocery store during the day, I would have to sit and debate before I went, should I go or should I not? If I go and, he comes home and sees, and he's going to get upset. And then if I tell him I went to the grocery store and he checks the miles to see if that's where I went, then he's going to say, well, who did you see? Who did you talk to? Okay. So, everything I did, I had to really sit and think about it. What the consequences would be. Yeah. And then from there, it just got worse. The jealousy. I had to sleep with him. After he threatened to shoot me, threatened to stab me for something I didn't even do. I had to sleep with him. And I laid there all night long, just praying that I would live to see the morning. He's not going to change. He'll never change. Because he don't think he has a problem. Once you're married, in God's eyes, you're always married. And that's what he's told me, till death do us part.
Come on, Cassie, remember how to do it. 1, 2, 3. Wait. I need to get a good start to run.
The wife has decided she's had enough. She wants a divorce. She wants out of the situation. And the spouse, he will come and say, you need to come talk to us. We need to get back in church, and you need to talk to us. And what they're really saying is, you need to come talk to my wife so she doesn't leave me. I'm very hesitant to go into those kind of situations and try to keep that together. I often think of that when I do a wedding, for better, for worse, for rich or poor, till death do us part. I know of some cases where the church has supported the abuser. The woman has felt isolated and ostracized for what's happened, and almost to blame for what's happened. And I'm sure that it has probably been said, well, God would want you to work this out. Well, I don't know why that person suddenly speaks for God in that situation. A family is not somebody ruling and dominating and killing and hurting. That's not family. And I think the church needs to understand what family is.
My mother died in this house. Me and Ralph lived together in this house. Now I feel safe enough to be here. Because when I left Ralph, all those times I had to go to a shelter, and he would stay here. And that bothered me so bad because, you know, it's my home. Both my parents are dead and they left me this home. And I had to run. I'll always watch. I'll never get to the point to where I think, well, it's over. He's not gonna bother me anymore. Because that's just, you know, everything I went through with him. I'll always watch to make sure.
I'd say in the last 3 years, we've had at least 200 to 250 domestic violence in this little county. We have two major problems. One is domestic violence and the other is car wrecks. People drive here too fast for a little rural section road.
If you had a choice between a wreck and a domestic violence call, which would you take?
Oh, the wreck. I'd take the wreck any day. I've had one case down here with a lady, Peterstown, and gosh, what is it? We've been down there 5 times, and finally they got a divorce. But it was really a mess. But when you get into that number, you get somebody hurt. It's dangerous. More officers killed in domestic violence than any other case. Because sometimes you walk in and the guy that you're going after, he's lost it. And he's using, most of them have guns. I don't know how many we've taken guns from and stuff, you know, to go in the house after them. I wasn't raised in my time to never lay a hand on a woman. I never, I just don't believe in it. Some of them may need it, just like a man, but I don't believe in hitting them because I never did think they could defend themselves.
I do believe that this is the most committed and the least reported crime in this country today. Of the hostages taken during criminal incidents, 70% are taken during domestic violence situations. You like to think it's that trap bank robber or that trap market owner when we pull up on the scene on a quick response and then the whole situation sort of unfolds, but most likely it's going to be a domestic violence call. A lot of you have been there.
It's a cyclic crime, not only within that particular family, but it cycles to one father to one son from one generation to the next. And we sort of pass it off in the darkness of night from one father to one son, sometimes daughters, but most often little boys. And it creates our criminal base. I mean, if you look at the violent criminal offenders in prison today, you ask them what happened to them as they were growing up, they'll tell you. You know, I lived in a home filled with violence and rage and destruction.
Half of the men that we're arresting are either physically or sexually assaulting their children. And then there's this number, 3/4 of the victims who are killed after they've left the violent relationship. You have to think about that for a minute. And I know we're all a bit frustrated by the way the victim reacts to us in the criminal justice system, but what we're asking them to do when we ask them to leave is we're telling them, you can trust me, put your life in my hands. You can trust me. And often when they do, they leave and they don't survive it, and they know that.
You don't want to put him in this. You don't want him to know where you're going, do you? Okay, so what we're going to put here is same, because right now your address is the same.
Well, he shoved her once, but, you know, he just told her things, mean things, you know, and was mean to her, told her she couldn't stay in the house. 6 years old. He just said she couldn't stay in the house and that she had to get out, and he didn't want her around no more. Said he was going to FUCK me whether I wanted it or not.
I'm going to put that in quotes, okay? And I know it's hard to see that, you know, that kind of language, but the magistrate needs to know the way he was treating you and what he was saying to you. Did he say at any point that he would not let Cassandra come with you, that he was going to keep her?
Right, oh yeah, he said he'd keep her, and he said many times he'd take him and go to Ohio, and I've never seen him again, and things like that. I heard her crying in the playpen, and I snuck around the back to the back door, and it was locked. So I went around the front and listened. I didn't hear him there, and I just seen her in the playpen, and everything was open.
Do you have any idea where he was?
He might have been going around the back to see what I was doing.
Went back and got my daughter. Did he say any other kinds of things like...
if I messed up our marriage, he'd kill me. I mean,
Okay.
he did say that.
He did say that. If you messed up the marriage, he would kill you. Okay.
Possessive and compulsive, and they don't want to let go, and they think of their wife or their girlfriend as being property, and you realize that they're dangerous.
I would try to set a time late in the afternoon that if it isn't served by then, that she would come to the shelter and stay with us at the shelter.
Hopefully, then once this order is served, and we make it clear to him that he needs to obey the terms and conditions of the order, then he won't come around, and he won't cause a problem. But you know, you may just speak to some of your neighbors and have some kind of a plan, so should they see the truck there or see him there in violation of the order, that they should call. When the order comes, we'll serve.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Because the thing about letting your neighbors know the order is only as good you know, as the protection that you have. And that, you know, if nobody knows you need help, nobody can help you.
Is there anything else you need right now? You need a hug. Is what you need.
Thank you. It's not so familiar, especially when I come back here then to talk with strangers again.
Yeah. All right.
This is the last time we have to do.
Yes, I hope so too.
That was like the middle of the end. It still kept going on and on. I figured, you know, if you try to leave, that's when things will get bad. But while you're there, they're not going to get so bad because you're there. But once you try to make that break to go is when things would get way out of control. So kind of made me not want to try to get out because I didn't think I could make it, you know. I tried before and I couldn't seem to get away from it. And he's persistently coming wherever I was, you know. I've moved away and had my own place, you know, was living, and he came in and he stayed, you know. Wasn't much I could do. Saying, well, if I, you know, just do like he says, I don't wear makeup, or I stay home all the time, or I fix him dinner just like he likes, you know, and just do everything to make him happy, you know. And then, you know, maybe just if he's gone to work, you say, oh, well, you know, we got this time to ourselves, you know, and make the best of it. And play a little music, play little games, you know, with the kids, and try to have fun before he gets back. And we don't have no friends and no family members anymore. You know, they've all went their own way and just, you know, we're tired of the whole situation, you know, and just the depression, you know, from trying to deal with him, the situation, you know, to where you felt if you didn't get out of it, you might not be sane anymore, you know, that it's either, like, I guess, a do or die situation.
She finally made the decision that she had to leave here, that she just wasn't going to be safe. He wasn't going to leave her alone. And so she moved to Virginia. I was working one Saturday afternoon and the phone rang and I picked it up and she was hysterical. At first I didn't even know who it was. You know, I had to get her calmed down because she was crying. She could see him. She says, what should I do? And I said, call the police, because he had violated a federal law. When you go across the state line for the purposes of violating a protective order, you violated the federal statute. They took him into custody and they put him in the Southern Regional Jail for
almost 3 months. But in the 3 months that he was in jail, it gave her a break she had never had before.
Yeah. Hopefully I've got out while they were young enough to where it won't seem like a familiar thing. When they meet someone, it seems like a familiar thing. My father and him are just alike, you know, and now looking back at it, I see exactly they're both alike in the same way they act and controlling and that kind of thing. And I don't know, you blame yourself and then you don't blame yourself, and then it just happens to people, but I think it can happen to anybody.
The number of people that will experience abuse in their lifetime for women is 50 to 60%.
I remember it very well, turning on the television when we first got a television. And I watched the old black and white TV series Dragnet, Jack Webb and Sergeant Friday and Gannon. And I used to imagine that Friday would come to my house, that the knock on the door wouldn't be the Dallas County Sheriff's Department, it would be the LAPD, and it'd be old Joe Friday there, saying just the facts, and I'd finally be able to tell an adult what was going on in my home and we could be saved. But the problem was that instead of getting Jack, who was a model cop, we got Joe, who didn't understand the issue or often told us as a family, if we come out here again, you're all going to jail. We were taught some incredible things 25 years ago in police academies. One of the things that we were taught was that domestic violence was a nuisance crime that required you to be a mediator, until the women's movement just woke law enforcement up by shaking them and saying, wait a minute.
In the early 1970s, there was a group in England who had just taken over a government building, who were all being beaten up, and said, we have no place to live, and the government needs to house us, and we can't go back to our husbands who are beating us. They coined this term that they're being battered, and this is where the first term battered women came from.
I'm blind in my left eye. I've got hairline fractures of my cheekbones. My knees have been dislocated through kick-ins. My child was born prematurely through being kicked in the stomach.
The feminists who were organizing their groups maybe had some ideas that they were going to overthrow the patriarchy in the next 20 years or whatever. But this issue of battering started to really come to the fore, because it was the thing that if you couldn't kick her out or she was just going to get beat up.
In Houston, we heard about a woman and her 2 children passing the night in a dumpster. And we just were like, this can't go on. There has to be a place where people can get help. We got 13 beds, 3 cribs, bring it on. And the very first kinds of things that we encountered was 300 families calling in the first month, needing assistance. There's 3 families in the kitchen we've not met before, and it's awkward. And we're like, yeah, maybe we got to get organized, That's what we're doing, in essence. We're starting a place that women can go to and organize themselves for the next steps that they want to take in their lives. The saturation that we have to achieve to really move attitudes, values, belief, behavior is very intense.
Well, I think the biggest problem probably is still the existence, the attitudes about women, the attitudes that men have about women. And if men develop those attitudes for society, it's society that's going to have to change. I'm a survivor. We began to talk about the need for a women's organization here at Rosebud. By the fall of 1977, the women were gathering and meeting. The chair of White Buffalo CAF asked me if I would be interested in going to present at a hearing that the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights was having, a 2-day symposium on what they call wife battering. And I said I would. I think there was just kind of a general feeling among the women there. There was probably 300 or 400 women there, that there really need to be a national voice. If our states were not organized into coalitions or network, then we were given the task of going back and doing that organizing piece. And I remember my reaction at the time was like, you want me to go back to the state of South Dakota to organize? Do you realize that I'm an Indian woman, living on Indian reservation? I thought it would be hard to organize around this issue. We formed the South Dakota Coalition Against Domestic Violence, which is still a very strong organization here in the state. Domestic violence was a human rights issue.
We started in '78 here in, a backwater place. It was a sort of a logical outgrowth of that, the activism and the desire for change that was part of the 60s and 70s.
And it was happening nationwide.
Oh,
At the same time, they were just popping over. It wasn't coming down from the top. It was like a grass fire across the country.
Hands-on advocacy. Let's not duplicate in our shelters and safe homes and our organizations the kinds of dominance and power and control that women are getting out of. This happened in every state. There are between 1,200 and 2,000 is a new number I've heard for the number of shelters there are. We're here to make change.
It is the #1 health threat to women. Now, we as the movement did not say that. The American Medical Association said that domestic violence is the single biggest health threat to women.
Maybe I'm hearing the oxygen.
Is it going?
Yeah.
That's my oxygen.
When he seen me with another man one day, he started telling everybody that he was going to shoot me. I thought, well, man, I said, I thought to myself, he's just joking, And I heard this noise, and I looked up, and he shot me. And all I can remember is trying to hold the blood in. I mean, it was pouring out faster than I could. You just couldn't imagine. I mean, the blood was so hot, my fingers were so numb. It was just like, I knew I was dying. I never heard from the prosecuting attorney. I mean, never a phone call, never a letter. I mean, I never even got the news of when the court date was going to be.
The thing I like about being a prosecutor is you can really go after the truth. And you do have a lot of power because you're kind of the gatekeeper for the courthouse and court system. Yeah, I feel like as a prosecutor, my first obligation is to not arrest law-abiding citizens, And so, I try to look at things critically and to see if the complaining witness is a reasonable person and can be believed. If the first thing they do is say, I'm telling you the absolute truth, I wonder why they have to start off telling me that, Is there some reason that I would doubt what they're saying? There's a lot of little clues that you pick up on. I mean, somebody wears a T-shirt that says, so many men, so little time, and they're talking about, some affront by someone. You have to look at a lot of different things.
The best training I had, but I wouldn't suggest it to anybody, was when I personally went through it. I learned how the civil system worked, the criminal system. I was led a very sheltered life, and I thought when you went to the courthouse for help that it was there. I came out of the courthouse screaming, victim blaming. That comes from magistrates and law enforcement and everybody, Well, if she would just do this, this, and this, he wouldn't get so angry that he would hit her. At one hearing, the guy said he beat her up because she didn't keep a clean house. 2 police officers were asked to go to her house to see if it was clean. Well, I don't care how dirty the house is. There's no reason that he should raise his hand and hit her.
Somebody has to believe in the victim. I try to do the best I can. Some of the jurors that come on the jury, they're not going to raise their hand and say, well, I, beat my wife, or, I held a gun to my wife's head, and really calmed her down. There are people like that on the jury sometimes. And there are some people on the jury who don't believe in these kind of cases or something, or they don't like a woman who is rough looking and unmarried and drinks. Those are the people who make the decisions. And that's what I have to cater my case to.
You've got real victims, the good women, and then you've got all of these other people who really brought on and are part of the violence and are not, you don't protect them the way you protect these women. And it's a very small percent, and I'm just going to make this up, 12% of women are good victims. And 88% of us are on some level fall short of that good victim status. And I think that's the thing that we face in society today, is that up front they'll say, yes, women should be protected, but all of these women are part of that.
The thing that really upsets me is when somebody comes in and I've never seen them before, and they start screaming at me because of something about their case. What do they think they're going to accomplish by doing that? And I've had a lot of people do that. I mean, they're just so anti-society, and I call it a loser mentality. They feel like they've already lost. and they're going to come in and they're going to scream at me because, you know, that's how so they're going to get something done. And that's probably the way they grew up, you know, getting stuff done with their family, fighting everybody. And unfortunately, a lot of those people end up in predicaments, perhaps more frequently than other people. But they're difficult people to deal with. And I think as a prosecutor, you have to learn how to deal with difficult people.
You know, I'm not saying the system don't work.
It don't work. I'm serious, it don't. I just don't see it happening in my life. You know, having kids. Well, I mean, you know, I do want to have a kid, but you know, I don't know about a husband. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm serious.
Maybe it's just how hard it
There's
is.
a germ in the air.
I think it's got a lot to do with
Whatever's happened in their life, maybe.
Haven't you ever heard a man tell his son, "Oh, son, men don't cry. Men are tough," you know? And then women are teaching their kids to play with dollies and put tears in their eyes and cook and clean for their husbands. And
I ain't no slave.
I know you ain't, because I can't get you to do nothing for me.
It's gonna change, boy.
2 years ago, a single bullet shattered Kathy Feliciano's life forever after a man she refused to date shot her in the stomach.
I definitely did not deserve to be shot.
Last week, a jury agreed this victim of domestic violence was awarded over $900,000 in a civil lawsuit.
I never got my chance in criminal court, and I feel as if justice was served. I mean, I got my day in court.
But that day won't change the fact she's in dire need of a lung transplant, and she's been given 5 years left to live.
It took a strong person to survive what I've went through, but I enjoy life. Hey, I can still smile, and, you know, I enjoy living.
Tamsin Fidel, 13 News.
They let him plead guilty to malicious assault. Malicious assault could be spitting on somebody. He got 1.5 years. And I had to fight for that half. Even though the judge still ordered him to pay me almost $1 million, I haven't gotten a red penny from him. I mean, I'm the one that's embarrassed when I have to be operated on and I have to hand them a Medicaid card. I shouldn't have to be a burden to the state. I know I'm going to be here till, you know, God calls me home, and I know that what time I'm still here, I want to try to enjoy it as much as possible. So I try to live normal, but it's really hard. Daughter.
Yeah, I graduated.
And I was proud that day too. I was right there. I don't do much anymore but sit here, and I enjoy the views. It's beautiful up here. You know, and I got family close by, and I just like it here. It's beautiful.
I went with this woman who lost custody of her 2 children in magistrate court this morning.
Did he have a lawyer?
Yes.
And she didn't?
And she didn't.
Okay, I'm just going to read it, okay, so I have an idea. He picked you up at 3. That was when you came back down from the scene in Cairo, right?
No.
We need a few more minutes to meet. Could we?
I'm scared. I'm so afraid I'm gonna lose my kids.
Yeah, your kids. What is this mother going to say?
Lies.
Okay.
All lies.
Okay. She gonna say you're a bad mother?
Probably.
Okay.
But she's the one that abandoned her son when he was my daughter's age. And she's gonna lie through her teeth for him.
You've had the children with you in North Carolina.
Yes, I haven't. He's never touched Nicole. He will not give her a bath because she's a girl. He will not change a diaper because she's a girl. I have raised these kids from day one.
I'm a freelance investigator and security specialist.
I work on both U.S. and international markets. I happen to be here in my hometown and picked up this current domestic case. Pat myself on the back a little bit. I'm a pretty good judge of character. If a guy comes to me and gives me a story, references marriage, custody of his children or whatever, I can usually determine whether or not he's telling me the straight story. And always, before I investigate in a domestic case, I check my client out for a number of reasons. I want to know, frankly, if he's telling me the truth. I also want to know if they can afford me. Is the amount of money they've given me as a retainer all I'm going to get? So it's a financial issue for me. I need to know who I'm dealing with. And in finding out those things, you can usually find out if he's the kind of guy that beats his wife.
In determining custody, oftentimes abuse of the mother is not taken into consideration. I hear magistrates, I hear law masters, I hear circuit judges, I hear lawyers say, well, but he doesn't hurt the kids. But when he hurts the mother, he does hurt the children. That's certainly emotional abuse at the minimum. Oftentimes children get hurt in the crossfire. Statistics tell us that if children live in a home when their mother's being physically abused, 60 to 70% of those children are being physically abused. But now what I'm seeing is a real change in attitude. I'm seeing fathers go after custody. And that'd be all right if I thought the fathers were really interested in having custody of their children, but I think it's a new way they've devised to abuse moms now. For as long as I've done this job, the threat's been around that if you try to leave me, I'll take the kids. That's a threat that most battered women hear. They hear their abusers say, you'll never see the kids again, I'll take the kids away from you, the court will give me the kids, you can't support the kids, I can, and da-da-da-da-da-da. That's been something that's been around as long as I've done this job. But now I'm actually seeing fathers going after it in court. They've got attorneys that are helping them. Now she's really in a bad position because now she's not just got the abuser to deal with, she's got a whole bunch of people that are helping the abuser, and the legal system's going along with it. It's really dangerous. This is really dangerous. I'm real concerned about this, and I'm seeing this happen more and more.
Well, a lot of stuff would never fly on it.
It's hard. This is so hard. Not as an advocate, not as somebody that works in domestic, as a mother, to lose my children would be, I can't imagine how awful that would be. And the system doesn't seem to think that that's so serious. You know, that makes me really angry. That makes me really angry. That in the name of protecting children, we're allowing abusers to abuse in a new way. It makes me really angry.
Got yourself together now and try to tell the kids. Did you bring something?
Just for this weekend. He's not supposed to get stuff up there.
You don't want the kids to see this home. You want them to see
How can a child be better off with the father when the father's been an abuser of the mother? How can that be? How can that be? It can't be. Okay, we'll see you later on this afternoon. We objected and said, how did we know that it was?
I'll be good. We're gonna go put you in a car seat. I'll be good. Here.
Karen, I'm leaving my card here, okay?
Some of these, what they call mad dad movements, they're making the point that the pendulum has swung too far to the left or right, and now they're suffering because of domestic violence legislation or pro-arrest policies, or us identifying that 90% of the offenders in domestic violence are male, and they feel as though that that's not accurate and that it's half and half and women are just as violent as men. I can't find that in the studies that I've seen. I don't see that in the numbers for 22 years in law enforcement. I don't see that in the numbers at hospitals of victims going into hospital. I don't see that talking to therapists who deal with victims of domestic violence. I don't see that in the ranks of the homicides in this country. There may be a day when it is 50-50, but I don't see it now.
Gracie came in August. Her husband beat her up, broke 4 of her ribs and her nose. When she came in the shelter, there's morning she'd get up, she couldn't make it down the steps, and I carried her down. She stayed here till, I think it was October, and she moved into an apartment out at Union. And there for a while, everything was going good for her. But he found out where she was, and he moved back in with her. And I went out to see her. She had bruises on her face. So the next thing I know, I found out she was found dead. They say they investigated it, but he always went around in town saying that once he'd get her in Pocahontas County again, he was going to kill her. But I can't say that he did, but she's dead now because they said that they found her in a car. She was drunk and she froze to death. Hypothermia set in where she stayed in the car so long. And Noah, her son's the one found her dead. And I think he's, right now at this time, he's living with his dad. And his dad still drinks. And I hope that he's taking good care of him. She always would share what she had. She could always put a smile on her face, even though you didn't really feel like smiling.
There's still not enough people saying, hey, violence is not okay. To hit your wife is not okay. To hit your partner is not okay. To hit your child, to rape your child is not okay. We don't have enough of that. You know, people saying that, or even institutions saying that. You know, leaders in this country, you know. Each time a woman dies as a result of violence, you know, children that die as a result of violence, there should be some outcry. But there isn't.
You've never been in a room an hour alone with your children?
No.
For a little over 3 months. And you aren't writing letters, you're not calling because you've been asked not to. So it's been pretty rough.
Yeah.
And maybe hard for your kids to understand.
This is a woman who's had a continuum of abuse from the very time she got here.
She said I failed to protect them. And I stayed away from him.
And you went to welfare and reported it?
Yeah. And he lied and told me he was living with me. And he wasn't. No. He fools everybody.
Well, and if he thought it was okay to have this kind of relationship with you when you were 13, then he maybe thinks it's okay with young girls.
I don't think he should get by with what he did.
I don't think so either.
He's walking around not having to deal with nothing, and we're being punished for what he did.
A woman comes to the department and says, my husband has been sexually abusing my daughter.
Well, if the mother was reporting that, then we would, our first step would be to see what action she is willing to take to protect her children. We're assuming that she was unaware of the abuse up to that point. That's not always the case, but And sometimes there are other issues going on as to why she's now reporting, when perhaps she did know that there was sexual abuse occurring in the family. But for whatever reason she did not report it, and then something happens, brings it on for her to, encourages her to make the report.
How would you assess a woman's ability to protect her child?
Well, it has to be a demonstrated ability to protect her child, because someone would say to us, well, yeah, I'll make sure he doesn't come back into the home. But historically, that hasn't been the case. Or just in the general assessment of how this individual functions, it would appear that they've been in a controlling situation for a number of years. It's not likely that they would just give that up, particularly with other factors in place. So we'd ask for a demonstration that they are able and willing to protect their child.
It goes both ways. I mean, there are clearly situations where children aren't protected in their homes by their moms. But there are many, many times where the mom will hear and the mom will do the right thing, which is go and report it. And then it's so hard on her because the first assumption is that she was a party to this. And it really takes somebody working with the mom to get past this.
You
when you're
lose
in
a
this
lot.
situation.
When you're in this situation, they can, because they have an incredible amount of power. Why are they not all over his case? I would love to see the department haul the fathers in and say to them, you know, you will never see your kids again unless you do this, 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 and this. If we would just come down hard on him, put him in jail for what he does, maybe he would A, either shape up, or B, leave her alone. You know, and then she could protect her children. Then she could take care of her
And the
children.
effort is to change her when
Right.
the effort should be
to change
him.
Who are the major abusers of children, mothers or fathers?
Generally speaking, of physical abuse, it is the men in the family. Neglect, lack of supervision, poor parenting practices, it's usually the mother.
If you're on welfare in West Virginia, a woman with 2 kids gets somewhere around $250 a month. You're not going to do an awful lot with that. If she's neglecting, there's a father for these children. Are we maybe looking at the wrong person here? Are we having expectations of the mom that we don't have of the dad?
We have a real double standard. They will always come down harder on the women.
It's the beginning of a long, rocky road.
Right.
My foster mommy says that I'll never get to go back, but it looks like I did. Yeah. She's the strongest woman in the whole world. You can't put yourself down now. You're on the TV.
I kept thinking that the kids was at camp, and eventually they was gonna get to come home.
It's hard. Hard.
We got through it.
I felt like I was upside down.
You felt like she was upside down. She felt like her world was upside down. I have him back in my home, but I don't have custody of him yet, and I don't know when that's gonna happen. They could come in and take him out, and there's nothing I can do about it, but let it happen.
Oh, I think she's a bright, bright girl, but there was such an interruption. Instead of giving her mother the support that she needed, they've made her mother afraid. So, Tammy's ended up moving quite a bit. Crystal's changed schools 3 times this year, back and forth, which, of course, interrupts your development at school. I do think it's in the kids' minds that this is what happens. They just come and take you away.
So how'd it go? How do you feel it went?
There is hope.
There is hope.
Yeah.
Where are you on the list?
106.
You're probably looking at a year. It's frustrating because when people say, why doesn't she just leave? This is one of the really major obstacles for people trying to have a house and live a life that's free of abuse. You have to have a place to live it in.
My grandmother's day, you got battered for 50 years. You got battered for 25 years. When the kids were finally gone, maybe you left them. But that's not true anymore. Women are leaving in their 20s and 30s now. And the whole welfare reform thing has actually put women backwards, given us less options to leave brutal husbands than we had before. So we're in worse shape now than we were 10 years ago.
And the punitive nature of this whole welfare climate is very frustrating to me. Shaming people who need any kind of economic leg up.
Stranded.
Stranded.
Only until the entire society is part of the solution for a victim to get out, and the road is seamless. There's a straight view of where you start from the time you call 911 to the time you take your children out of the violent relationship and find a home for yourself and a job and a helping hand along the way, to have some hope in a community that shepherds them through all this long term so they don't turn and go back to another violent offender, or their children don't turn out to be violent offenders of tomorrow.
85% of the men that I've worked with over the years that have battered only hit people in their homes, only hit their wives and only hit their children. So it's not about his alcoholism or his unemployment or his rage. It's about his home. It's about who he sees himself as when he walks into his front door. These men are our men. They're our sons, they're our boys, and they're beating and raping and hurting women. And how did we produce them? And then we have to ask ourselves, what are we doing to our daughters to give them what they need to live in a world where those things happen to women?
Go to your next door neighbor and call the police and tell them. Take us to a better home like here. Keep you safe.
Foster home, and they set me in a foster home. That's why I ain't calling the police. I run.
I don't like foster homes. Because they could take you away from your family.
But violence will never happen again in our house. I hope not. Anyways.
We got took, and if we get taken again, my mom will get us back when we're 18. So.
Do you think your husband's going to hurt you?
Nope, because I ain't getting married.
My mom don't want to get married because she don't trust anybody.
That's why I ain't getting married, because I ain't trusting no man. First time they put their hands on me, they bye-bye.
I said,
and if they don't leave, I'm going to shoot them.
I said, I'm going to be a cop. I'm going to be a cop when I grow up, so they wouldn't beat me.
No problem with that. I hate all boys except for my brother. They're just crazy.
Boys are rude.
They burp, they don't say excuse me, they leave the toilet seat up and somebody could fall in.
Whoever I get married to, don't watch TV and drink beer. They're going to have to do cook, clean, work. They're going to have to do everything that women do.
Help some too.
I know everything that women do.
He's going to help around the house and help. And he's gonna be cute.
He's gonna be brushing his teeth every day and washing his butt.
Clean. He's gonna be clean.
He's gonna be washing his butt.
He's gonna wash his own dishes. He's gonna wash his own clothes. If he has pets or anything, he's gonna clean up after them for himself. He's gonna have to be nice, because if he's not nice, he ain't coming in. He could sleep outside on the porch. I would get their personality. You know, if they have a good personality. And, you know, if they treat you good and everything. And if they have a dog, well, take turns. You wash the dog, then I'll wash the dog, then you. And then if you have a cat, so if I have a cat, I'll clean up before he scratches.
When I went to the Holocaust Museum in Washington, it's an incredible place to go. I think every American should go there. There was a guide there that told us about how the Germans were having psychological problems with pushing children into the gas chamber. So they sort of neutralize the view of an inmate by stripping the clothes from them and shaving their hair. I've seen this with domestic violence offenders where they tell a victim, you can't wear this certain makeup, you can't wear this certain hair color, you can't wear this certain dress, you can't do this, you can't do that. Taking a human and taking away all of their civil rights, denying them the right to be a human. And it makes it a lot easier for that prison guard, who happens to be in control of a family field of domestic violence, to offend just like those men did when they pushed those small children into those gas chambers. And I'm not being melodramatic, I'm just telling you, it's easy to abuse someone if you see them less than human.
I remember saying when we passed the Violence Against Women Act, which for me, doing a lot of the political activism kind of stuff for money and law changes and so forth, was just, it was a wonderful moment. And then immediately afterwards I said, okay, we did this. We are now firmly at the cliff of success.
On one hand, you know, they're giving us money to establish laws to protect women. They're giving us money for shelter. But at the same time, they can dictate how that's going to be done. You know, is this movement still a grassroots movement? You know, they follow these models. They present these models that are based on the mental health, and the woman becomes a client, becomes a number.
One place that we went wrong 10 years ago was that we stopped having the basis of our organizing, consciousness raising for women, and working with organizing women to take action. More and more our shelters and our programs have become more professionalized and institutionalized so that women are seen as clients more, victims. I mean, can you imagine Martin Luther King organizing a group of clients?
As we institutionalize the movement, we just become another social agency. We're going to be here 100 years from now, providing direct services to battered women and rape victims, or, you know. You know what I mean? And so, you know, we have to take a look at it. And I think we need to really go back and look at us where we've been.
No more women hurt and killed.
The heart of the whole work is, of course, working with the women.
No more keeping quiet for me. No more, no more, no more keeping.
This was social change work. That we are going to create a world that's nonviolent. There's the old concept that we have that says it takes a village, a whole village, to raise a child. And I think just by raising that child, it doesn't end there. It takes a whole village for a child to live in eventually as an adult. So that responsibility continues with the village. You know, in how we, as adults, live within our own villages. You know, we really shouldn't have any shelters.
Too many years you clipped my wings to make me call this home. Now this chick's got to hit the road for a bigger range to roam. I ain't staying in your chicken yard. I don't know why life has to be so hard. Cock-a-doodle-doo, cock-a-doodle-dum. You flap your wings just to see me run. I ain't staying in your chicken yard.
Stop it! Seriously.
I think the biggest thing was moving away from everything, everybody that I knew, and moving away. I mean, it was a big move, and when Terry suggested it, I was like, no way. Am I going to move to another state, you know, to get away from him and let him run me away? But it's actually been really good for me. A whole new start, you know, a whole new place for the kids, and just a whole new canvas. It's kind of weird. It's hard to believe I was in that situation, and that we was actually going through that kind of stuff. It seems like somebody else's life. I was watched, controlled, told how to act, how to be. You know, it is amazing the freedom that you feel. I worked on a construction site job, and I was flagging, and just the sun and the trees. not have nobody over my shoulder and me scared to death to turn around and say hey or not to another person, you know. It's amazing how much excitement is like a kid in a toy store. When you get out and you're on your own and you don't have that chain holding you back, you can think and feel and, you know, learn what your likes and dislikes are, and you tend to lose a lot of your own thoughts when you're in a relationship like that. But you actually can go in the store and buy a pair of pants you like. Just for that, you should get away. It's such a freedom feeling to be your own person. It's amazing. I mean, once you've got that freedom, you will never let it go.
I'm stuck. I'm stuck on myself too. I got a good view. You can see from miles away all the way up there. You can see from all the way up.
To learn more about shelter, visit www.itvs.org.
I ain't staying in your chicken yard. I don't know why life has to be so hard. Cock-a-doodle-doo, cock-a-doodle-dum. You flap your wings just to see me come. I ain't staying in your chicken yard. I ain't staying in your chicken yard.
Shelter was funded by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, Kentucky Educational Television Fund for Independent Production, Kentucky Arts Council, Paul Robeson Fund for Independent Media of the Funding Exchange, Commission on Religion in Appalachia, and the Kentucky Foundation for Women.